the future of HR is really going to be defined by what we do today and how we embed ourselves as a really critical part of the business. And COVID's given us that platform to do so. If we continue down the path that we've just established over the past 2-3 years and addressing COVID, I think what we're going to see is that HR becomes essentially a risk mitigation function in a lot of ways, along with, you know, really leveraging untapped potential. And that's not just with our people, that's also in parts of the business that are untapped. It's about identifying the risks that exist and mitigating them in innovative ways to really address what the business needs. And I think that's just about becoming this inherent part of the C-suite, looking over the horizon, identifying and solution design that goes beyond what is the traditional kind of structure of HR. We're not just about people and process, we're about business and about how to leverage business in the best possible way to get the best outcomes.
Yeah, I agree with Renee. There's a lot of risk associated with what we're doing going forward. And I think from a HR profession, AHRI's model of excellence is a really good step in the right direction, because it's really going to set up for HR professionals around what capabilities they'll need and how they can, what does good look like. But coupled with that, I also think the certification process is going to be really important over the next 10 years, because a lot of organisations are going to say, how do I know that you are actually capable of it? Have you been tested? Have you been proven? In the same way that they talk about having CPA qualified accountants and CFOs, is they're going to want to look for a sense of some sort of model where they can say, yes, you've been tested and you actually demonstrated you're capable of doing this. Because
I think about ahead, if we are bogged down as a profession in that risk mitigation, I mean, you're already talking about organisations that say, oh, well, why do we even have to have an employment contract? Should be just a trust relationship? Or, you know, policies that spell out X, Y, Z, A, B, C, when, you know, we just rely on the staff member to do the right thing, you know, like those unlimited leave policies and the like. So there's that sort of divergence, I suppose, of trying to protect an organisation and the various risks. And you know, being agile to be.
I agree with you, Athena, and I think we have to flip the whole paradigm about what risk mitigation looks like in HR.
Yes.
Because
yeah, you're right.
what we've always done is we've embedded a policy to mitigate a risk. But like you say, when we talk about unlimited leave and, you know, trust-based engagement with employees, that is in and of itself a risk mitigation factor, but it moves away from compliance of risk. And I think that's where HR have to mature its thinking about what our role is in risk mitigation, away from let's design a policy that spells out every eventuality to mitigate every legal risk that could possibly come to pass, to a more fluid and agile process, like you're saying.
Look, I think, you know, the importance of the soft skills isn't going to vanish. Like, it doesn't matter. A lot of our roles will be automated. I mean, already it's happening. A lot of systems now have the capacity to onboard your staff before they get there, you know, sending out contracts and signing up for this and being trained on that. It's great, because that saves us a lot of time and gives us the ability to go back and focus on that. I mean, you know, we need to start teaching and training our workforce, our leaders in particular, on emotional intelligence, on understanding your position in staff engagement, why that matters, why that's important. You know, we have to be the facilitators of, you know, or at least the coordinators of being able to have our leaders develop.
My view is, if I would keep it simple, HR has a very unique opportunity. We've seen it through being drawn upon to help solve organisational problems through COVID and what that's done. The organisations want us to step into that space, but to do so, we need to solve problems for them. We don't need to come in and tell them what we can't do. We need to tell them, you know, these are the parameters we're operating in. But this is the kind of options we have to solve those problems. And the more HR professionals and leaders can step into that space of problem solving, the better we'll be as a profession, because businesses are crying out for us to be the solution to many of the complex problems they're experiencing. But I also think it's really important for HR professionals to have a broad generalist grounding in regards to the practice of HR. There are specialist positions and areas that are emerging, and increasingly so in HR. But I really think that it's important, if we are going to be problem solvers, to have a broad understanding of all aspects of HR.
I think there's two things that I'd probably like to highlight, or maybe it's three actually. The first is that I think that the HR practitioners and the HR function needs to really wholeheartedly embrace technology. I am still seeing that technology solutions are often driven from the ICT function in an organisation, or they are kind of piecemeal type talent solutions that solve one problem but don't consider the entirety of the employee lifecycle opportunity action. So I think we really need to get better at delivering in partnership with the business. The business need is, changing dramatically, and we need to really be tapped into that. And at the moment, I still see often HR functions are more siloed or insular than they would ideally be. And then my final point is probably it's probably building on Jonathan's point around generalization. I agree with Jonathan that there is a requirement to have a generalist understanding of HR functions, because you need to, as a practitioner, understand the component parts that come together to be able to provide solutions. But I would probably offer a slightly different perspective in regards to specializations. So I think that as I see the requirements in business becoming far more complex around workforce planning, strategy, talent identification, mobilization of capability, how do you address the skill shortages, etc. I think there is actually a really deep requirement for specialist technical expertise in some of those areas, especially around education skills and training, because some of the emergent requirements at a national level actually require quite different ways of thinking about building skills and competencies.
I think HR is only going to get more litigious. We've seen that through COVID, because there was a requirement to quickly understand changes to legislation that were happening very, at speed. But it was going to happen anyway. And what underpins everything we do in HR is an understanding and ability to read and interpret legislation, awards, and enterprise agreements. And even a lower level or entry level graduate HR professional will be asked to write contracts, to interpret an enterprise agreement clause and give that advice over the phone to an employee or a manager. So I think it is really fundamental to what we do.
Yeah, I agree. Those skills will be really important, but also following on from that, the future of HR professionals will need to be really agile. So the overall organisation success will be by aligning our HR goals or our people and culture sort of objectives with the company's vision and mission as well. So we need to be preparing for the future changing work methods and styles of a new and diverse workforce. And I think that we're certainly seeing that in terms of inclusion and diversity and neurodiversity and unlocking the potential to link back to that sort of talent shortage as well. So we will need to embrace the human-machine integration and AI, which I'm very excited about. And for example, using it in, more chatbots. So we've got a few chatbots that we're engaged with at the moment, but we'll really need to focus on that integration and the return of the human approach to our management practices as well.